igualdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Siempre. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todos se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hacia dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
Of the Faith Coalition to stop Cop City. And I'm looking at each one of your faces, and I really want to understand how it is that you asked people to vote for you and then ignored their voices. How it is that you feel okay with yourself lauding Abel Mabel, who had a lot to say about treating people right, who had a lot to say about the words of the Bible that many of you like to quote. Well, let me remind you of something. Be not deceived, for God is not mocked. That whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. So understand this, that the sins of the father will be visited on the children. It has happened time and again. So it may not happen to you, but what about your child? What about their children? What about their children's children's children? What will your legacy be? You so-called legacies of black misleadership sitting up here on this council. Let me tell you something. Representation is not enough when you don't represent the people who elected you. The people came out and spoke clearly. And let me go to the Bible one more again and say that we are here as clergy to cry loud and spare not. We are opening our mouths and crying with a loud voice to say that we don't want Cop City. I live in East Atlanta. I don't want Cop City. I got 5 black children. I don't want Cop City. I like breathing clean air. I don't want Cop City. I want to drink clean water. I don't want Cop City. I don't want Black Hawk helicopters landing around the corner from my house. I don't want Cop City. I don't. My neighbors don't. My granny don't. She's been in her house almost 50 years, and you suckers will never get it through gentrification because we knew what to do. And Mary Norwood and the people of Buckhead, this will not be your trade-off. When are you going to stop dealing with the white supremacist infrastructure and dealing with the so-called black elites in Atlanta in your silent agreement that as long as they go along with the white establishment, they gonna keep them other N-words over there in control? We know that in the 20 to 30 year cycle of gentrification, by the time black people can move back into my neighborhood the way we used to be, it'll be 20 or 30 years from now. And Cop City was your answer to make sure that our black asses stay right over there and don't go to Buckhead. Well, we telling you right now, as sure as Peachtree runs into Buckhead. This is our land, and we ain't gonna stop fighting. We are not going to stop standing. Get used to these voices. Get used to these faces. Get used to being called out. And if you feel like you in church, then maybe you ought to say ouch, because I know I'm standing up here preaching to somebody. And if you harden your heart, be reminded of the story of another Pharaoh who had a very hard heart, who would not free the people of God, who would not lead them to their land. You know what happened in that story. Don't think that you will not suffer the same fate. Don't think that the infrastructure of this so-called black Mecca will not come toppling over, because it will. And how long are you going to treat us like we dumb as dirt? We're not. We are not. We know more than you think we know. And the fact that you chose to ignore a legal court order to stop work and allowed greedy corporations to go ahead displacing people, but taking up my green space. Don't you know that the environment has been used to oppress and suppress black people and indigenous people for ages? And we see this. So we're talking about environmental justice. We're talking about economic justice, because the least y'all could have done was mandate that those contractors who work on that job, that they hire at least 33% of community members. But you're not doing that. So you don't care about the air we breathe. You don't care about the water we drink. You don't care if we can make a living wage. You don't want to sustain that community. You want to displace us so that those who are giving you kickbacks can have something that they said we built over here and we got them Negroes out. Why are you okay with that? Because I know somebody who's on this council had a father who stood to make sure that Negroes could stand and be wherever they wanted to be. I'm saying all of it, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of self-righteous people sitting in seats of so-called authority, and you are deluded to think that you have power. We have the power, and we gave you authority because we trusted you. My God. And shame on you, Dustin Hillis. I don't give a damn if you don't look at me one time, because you know what you have done, and you know you ain't worth the dirt up under your feet. But I tell you what, in the words of my granny, because I ain't got to lean on the Bible, Mary Kay Thomas is a strong woman and taught me to fight. In the words of my granny, you may not pay what you owe, but you will reap what you sow.
Woo!
Boy, look at here.
Man, oh man. Yo, we got to bring that sister on Black Power Media.
This is how we start the show off. We got to. This is how we do. We kind of this the Rise Up morning show. In case y'all still sleeping, we thought we'll wake you up, because it's necessary. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean that piece right there, for folks who don't know, that was Reverend Keyanna Jones, and that was a piece that took place at the Atlanta City Council meeting. That was when they had public comments, March 6, 2023. It was a historical situation, and we're going to talk about that in a little while. But again, we wanted to get this thing started because we felt like, Cop City is the order of the day. It's been going on for a number of years now. A number of different faces have been noticed. A number of different fights have been fought. Joy James and I wrote a book about it. Want to hear it? Here it go. Beyond Cop Cities. You know what I'm saying? It's been a lot of fighting. It's been a lot of, lot going on in regards to this. And Reverend Keyanna, she ripped it. She ripped it in half. That piece right there is one of my favorite joints when you talk about people speaking from spirit. That was a spiritual moment, so we shout her out. And indeed, I think we should get her up on here relatively soon. How you feeling today, Kimber?
Hey, I'm feeling great. I was up, but after I heard that, I was just up, but now I'm up, motivated, ready to seize the time, man. Like that. Okay. When you talk about the spirit, I've definitely like the spirit of Malcolm, Kwame Ture, Patrice Lumumba. You know, I was feeling all of that through her just now. So you know, Huey P. Newton. Oh, let me some sisters, Sada Shakur, Harriet Tubman. So yeah, the spirit. I think the spirit was you know, flowing right through her. So yeah. And she, you know, that if I could say, you know, just listening to her, calling out the collaborators, man, like that's what we had to, you know, call them. And just you know, that was a great point, the legacy that you're going to leave behind, because the legacy, what they do now is going to have an impact, an effect on generations to come. And you know, sometimes you know, our people come with this Eurocentric way of looking at things. I think they call it like cost benefit. Under capitalism, they call it cost benefit analysis. You know, but you know, they're more concerned about the cost of things rather than, you know, how it benefits the community. And their whole mentality is like, hey, you know, we were able to address the problems for our generation. Whatever issues happen down the line is up for that generation to figure it out. You know, like that's a very Eurocentric way of, like, you know, looking at the world, and just looking at the problems of today. And I understand how they have that perspective, because they're causing the issues anyway. They're causing the problems in the first place. So they're not looking to solve them. But yeah, you know, that was powerful, man. I can't wait to connect with that sister, man. Because
hey, man,
yeah,
well, you
she's
know,
serious.
She is pretty serious. In fact, you know what I'm saying, I think we should bring her on right now. What's happening? How you doing?
What's up? Rise Up Morning Show. Rise up, people. It is good to be here. I am fangirling out right now because these are like my favorite people in the morning, and I get to be here.
Man, listen, let me tell you something, man. We Kimber, if I ain't bring you on, he's about to lose it over there. He's like, oh man, what is this that? Oh, I've been looking for a sister like this. Oh, this. I'm like, calm down. I said, calm down, younger Kimber. So we had to get the people what they demand, what they ask for. And it was like, where Reverend Keyanna Jones Moore at? So, you know, she in the building. That's what happened. You check out the Rise Up Morning Show. We make it happen. We ain't just Memorex. This is for real over here. Anyway,
that's it. Live and in color.
Live and in color. I want to, for folks who don't know, I'm gonna read your bio real quick. Keyanna Jones Moore is a political and social justice activist, community organizer from ATL. She currently works as a chapter organizer with the Sierra Club Georgia chapter, where she emphasizes the need for Black people to understand how the environment impacts life, impacts your life and my life. You know what I mean? What else? She also served as co-pastor of Park Avenue Baptist Church. She's a pastor. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know nothing about that. She was just front with the suit on. You know, you got some fake pastors out here, but I think Keyanna Jones Moore, she could turn water into Uncle Nearest. You know what I mean? So, you know, we definitely happy to have her on here. And much more. She's a wife, mother of 5. You know what I mean? And she came to hang out with us, and we're gonna try to convince her into being a regular here on Black Power Media. I think she need her own show. What you think, Kimber?
Hey, she need her own show. Put it in the chat if you want, you know, Pastor Keyanna to be here. You know, let her know.
Put it in the chat.
Oh man, y'all hyping me up. You
hyped us up. You started it. You know what I'm saying?
That was fire. I know everybody that's tapped in is wired right now.
No doubt.
Hey, if I could ask though, was everybody behind you? Were they with you? Because it looked like it was a white man. Okay, it looked like it was a white man fidgeting.
Like, actually, I will tell you that arm that you saw that was all tatted up. That's one of my co-pastors. Right there.
Okay.
They tatted up in Park Avenue. I'm the only one of us that doesn't have tats on the pastoral team.
That's what's up.
The chaplain, everybody. The chaplain was on the other side. One of our other associate ministers was behind me. It was a bunch of clergy people behind me at that time. We showed up in mass. just to let them know that the same way, you know, the concerned Black clergy will get up and do some moral Monday shit and kind of make things a moral issue or whatever. We wanted people to know that we see Cop City as a moral issue. So for as many people who would remain silent and jump behind Andre Dickens in a Men's Warehouse commercial wearing the same suits talking about we need cops, you got just as many pastors and other clergy people who will come out, and just faith leaders in general, because we had some imams with us and some rabbis. We had a bunch of people. We was deep that day, just to let them know that we ain't rolling alone. Like, I wasn't by myself.
So check it out, because, you know, keeping in mind, this is an international morning show. We got some folks in France watching us right now. Shout out to the folks in France under the French colonizers over there. Shout out to our brothers sisters on the continent and abroad. Before we get into what is Cop City, you know, I know what that meeting was about, but can you give folks some context, because many of our viewers, you know, it just might look like a regular city council meeting, but this was an historic situation. So can please, if you don't mind, you know, give us some background on it so the folks can get familiar.
At that particular council meeting, the Faith Coalition to Stop Cop City decided that it was extremely pertinent for us to show up. We wanted to show up in mass. We wanted to show up in full clergy drag and whatever your faith calls for as a traditional ritualistic outfit. We wanted to make sure that we raised our voices in a press conference before the council meeting happened, because that council meeting happened a few months after the murder of the comrade Manuel Esteban Paez Terán, known as Tortuguita. That council meeting also happened the Monday after March 5th, wherein a music concert and family day was held at Entrenchment Creek Park, which was all public property. But at that particular music festival and family day, cops descended upon us, pointing rifles inside bouncy houses, holding mothers and babies at gunpoint against the music stage, because during the concert, there was a fire set to some construction equipment that was like a mile away, maybe a mile and a half away from where the music festival was taking place. But because of the overreach of law enforcement, people were charged with domestic terrorism for attending a concert, because everybody was assumed to have had some type of part in the destruction of that construction equipment that happened at the time. And all of this is happening in response to the proposed building of Cop City. Cop City is a militarized police training facility that would take away 381 acres of forest land known as the South River Forest, and it encompasses the South River watershed. And the South River itself is the headwater of the largest body of water in the state of Georgia, the Altamaha. And the South River Forest was, because they have cut down those trees there, was the largest urban forest in the southeastern United States. So this all nestled into the heart of a majority Black community. It set the people of Atlanta on fire, and people decided that they needed to speak up against this, because this training facility wasn't just your run-of-the-mill place where police officers were going to have their police academy. We are talking about initial plans that included a Black Hawk helicopter landing pad. We are talking about a firing range, which there is one already on that property that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, wherein the community who lives there hears those gunshots all the time. And I can attest to that, because I used to live right behind there, and it's the reason why I moved, honestly. You are talking about a mock city wherein police would practice quote unquote urban warfare. Now, we know that to the less enlightened ones of us, the word urban is synonymous with Black. Although urban is, you know, talking about a metropolitan area. When people hear urban, they hear Black. So you're talking about warfare on Black bodies. You are talking about mock apartment buildings and mock hotels where the police would scale these buildings, go into these buildings, throw hand grenades and bombs inside these buildings to practice their terrorism of Black people. And there would also be a burn tower, because they wanted this to be a so-called public safety training facility that would not only encompass police training, but fire department training as well. So when you're talking about a Black Hawk helicopter landing pad, you're talking about a burn tower, you are talking about chemicals going into the air where Black people are breathing, where we are already overrun and overridden with adverse health conditions because of the environment. And when people heard about this, people really thought that it was important that they speak out, because in addition to this, the plan included a land swap with a racist, not surprising, a racist CEO by the name of Ryan Millsap, who runs a movie studio. And that land swap was actually, that deal was brokered illegally. There have been court cases that have addressed this. And the people were saying, look, we don't want this land swap. We don't want you taking away Entrenchment Creek Park, which is also called Weelaunee. We don't want you taking away 381 acres of trees that we need, because not for nothing, there's a flooding issue in DeKalb County. And we know that trees anchor things into the ground and they help to mitigate flooding. So people were saying that they didn't want this. And the council ignored people back in 2021, where people gave 17 hours of public comment via Zoom because meetings weren't held in person. People continued to write letters. People were showing up at commissioners' meetings in DeKalb County. They were showing up at different times at council meetings in the city of Atlanta. But that particular council meeting was the day that we decided that we wanted to bring people out again. And we wanted the same people who showed up to give 17 hours worth of public comment online. We wanted that same energy in person, because we needed the Atlanta City Council to feel where the people were coming from. And we needed them to understand that this is not a flight of fancy. This is about our lives, and that we take our lives seriously, and that they cannot just make decisions about our lives without input from us. I have a saying that I tell people all the time: nothing about me without me. You ain't making no decisions that impact me and the way I live and the way I raise my children and how my family can live without my input. Now, whether you take that input or not into consideration is another thing. If you do, that's great. If you don't, then we're going to have to continue on down a different road. But nothing about us without us was the message of that day at the council meeting. And we did pack out Atlanta City Hall, and we stayed there and made that council listen to us for many, many hours as person after person expressed dissent against this project and also against the state of policing in the city of Atlanta.
I want to ask you, and I appreciate the thoroughness of what it is you just laid out, because I think that, you know, when folks talk about Cop City, you know, we've seen different talking heads, you know, we've seen different people, you know, that kind of, you know, are the darlings of mercenary media. You know what I'm saying? The folks who they call on and say, okay, well, what's your thoughts? And how you feel and what's really going on, so on and so forth. I want to ask you, because we live in Atlanta. You and I, of course, Kimber's up in Brooklyn somewhere, you know what I'm saying, wishing he was in Atlanta with us. But we live in Atlanta, and Atlanta is thought of as a quote unquote Black Mecca, right? And we know from being here, you being born here, me being here the last 20 years, that the Black Mecca is becoming more of a Mecca and becoming more of a desert, because it's not the Atlanta that we knew in the 80s. It's not the Atlanta that existed before the Olympics. You know, it's a whole nother program. I want to, if you don't mind, give us a description of what Atlanta is today and why there's even a thought of a cop city, because we know that there are forces behind this. It's not just some situation where you're saying that, okay, we need better policing and, you know, we want Black folks in the Black Mecca to be safe, and, you know, we want their housing to be protected, so on and so forth. Let's get to that. Let's get to the meat of it.
Yeah, my comrades and I often say that Atlanta is not a real place. And I take it a step further and say that Atlanta is the land of make-believe. This is the land where we want to make believe that it is a Black Mecca, that it is a place where Black people can thrive without having to bow down to the powers that be that undergird white supremacy. We want to make believe that Atlanta has all of this Black excellence and that Black people are just pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and they're making it happen in Atlanta. That is not what is happening in Atlanta. There are a lot of people in Atlanta who want to make believe that they are celebrities. So they want proximity to celebrities, because we do have quite a few celebrities that have moved here. Atlanta has positioned itself in entertainment right behind LA and New York. And Atlanta is right there at number 3. We might be tied with New York right now for entertainment. But what happens when we have an influx of people who are celebrities or think they're celebrities, and people want to make them think they're celebrities that move here, is that you get a lot of hangers on. And those people who are celebrities often intertwine themselves with the Black misleadership class. And we're talking about people like Mayor Andre Dickens. We are talking about Black people who sit in the state house in the state of Georgia, who are Black and have amassed a certain amount of prestige because, oh, they say, well, I'm a civil rights attorney and I've been on the front lines of, the Black Power movement in Atlanta. But these people are faking the funk. Like, these people are people who might have shown up to somebody's court case and not done them any justice. These people might be somebody who decided that they wanted to have more of a place in politics after they might have been out in the streets. I know one person who is a state representative in the state of Georgia who was well known for representing a family whose child was killed by the police, but now that lawyer is barely speaking out about anything because she's been sucked into that world of so-called political power. But what we see here in Atlanta is that the Atlanta way has taken center stage. And what the Atlanta way is that silent agreement between those in the Black misleadership class and the white supremacist infrastructure that says, in exchange for money, for the proximity to power, a seat in a place of authority, a title, what I will do is ensure that those who look like me follow me. And by following my lead, they won't resist what you're suppressing them with. They won't resist when you decide that you're going to over surveil and under resource their communities, because they're following me, because, I represent my people. And so much of Atlanta has become that misrepresentation. We have some people who are figureheads, some people who speak very well and are able to lie, and people believe them. And what has happened, and we can see this in mayors from Keisha Lance Bottoms, before her Kasim Reed, to now Andre Dickens, that they are not only there in that position of authority as the head of the city of Atlanta, but then they have those behind them on the city council. And we're talking about people who have these legacy names. And this is how we talk about Andrea Boone. This is how we talk about what is the little boy name? Julian Bond, Michael Julian Bond. This is how we get.
You said was the little boy name. I'm sitting there. Kimberly.
Hey,
yo,
what ran through my head, I'm somewhere else, man. But I went to Ohio. I'm thinking about. I ain't know.
You did to be right to somebody. She said, what's the little boy name? She said Julian Bond. Julian Bond older than both of us.
Because he boasts the same name as his father. And I point to him specifically because he is a person who has said, I'm tired of people comparing my name to my father's, or comparing me to my father. But the thing is, you had no problem with your name being synonymous with your father when you were running and pandering for votes and thought that was going to put you in that position.
Right.
Now you want to distance yourself. And I will also say that legacy in particular is not necessarily too far off, because there are some things that we could say about his father's leadership and relationships and proximity to so-called civil rights leaders and everything too. But what we see in Atlanta is that Atlanta boasts a high population of Black people. And yes, some Black people are doing well here, but Atlanta also boasts the highest wealth gap in this country. Atlanta also boasts dumb decisions like closing down a shelter at the corner of Peachtree and Pine Street and putting nothing in its place with nowhere to go. Atlanta also boasts closing Atlanta Medical Center right in the heart of the 4th Ward so Black people can't get medical care. It also boasts closing down another hospital in East Point where more Black people can't get care. So what do you see is the reality of Atlanta. Black people are oppressed in a way in Atlanta that they have never been before. people in Atlanta, Black people in Atlanta, are finding themselves at such a disadvantage. Because if you are not willing to shuck and jive and do a little jig for the establishment, you're going to have a hard way to go in a short time to get there. But it's okay for those who have established themselves to be truth tellers. And one thing that I can say is that when you look at these so-called celebrities, you have so many Black celebrities in Atlanta, so many of these reality TV show stars who've moved here and become celebrities, and they've opened up their businesses, and you got a sucker like Killer Mike running around, and people are thinking that this is a real deep brother, because back in the day, when he was talking about Reaganomics, it was something to listen to and it was extremely relevant. But then along the way, he showed himself to be a true capitalist, to show us that he's more about his business than he is about Black people, because he found himself making sure that he was at a fundraiser with Governor Brian Kemp and Kelly Loeffler, right-wing Republicans who have been oppressing Black people. And not that, it's only a right-wing Republican thing. But also, I remember seeing Killer Mike down at City Hall one day, and you know what he came to speak about? He came to talk about the nightlife ordinance that was being proposed, because again, it impacted his bottom line. Killer Mike came to City Hall and said nothing else about the state of Black people in Atlanta and how they live. You got T.I. coming down there, and they want to give him awards, and Lil Baby getting a day at the General Assembly. And what in the world are we doing? What Atlanta has really become is the prime place for rounding up Black people and making sure that they are following talking heads who have money and position and will lead them to hell in a handbasket, because that's literally what is happening. Atlanta has become that place where they put Black people in a position of authority. They give Black people some wealth and they say, hey, this is what you should aspire to be. So now we're just churning out more Black sheep.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Keyanna Jones Moore explodes on the Rise Up Morning Show. We had to go to a break, but I had pulled up because when she said the little boy, I had to pull up Julian Bond, because this is Michael Julian Bond right here, who she said, what's the little boy name? So I had to show folks the little boy. He looked so sad right there too. He must have hurt.
Look, don't be talking about him. That's some people's is he a person who went to Morehouse? I want to say that he might be one of those Jesus. Morehouse men.
Sweet baby Jesus Bond. That's what they call it.
Anyway. You know, you can't talk about these people who went to HBCUs, because that is like the ultimate right there. If you have gone to an HBCU and if you graduated, that's the holy grail. Like, you are literally a Messiah and you cannot be touched. And I'm already expect, because I know my husband is going to share this video on Facebook, and I'm already expect for a bunch of these little Morehouse and Spelman suckers to come out the woodwork with some stuff to say. And I always tell my husband, send them my way. Like, don't talk to my husband, come talk to me, because I ain't the one.
Reverend Keyanna Jones making me look like a born again Christian in a white church. Anyway, Ikemba, go to the break, man. Go to the break.
Anti-colonial movement, at the juncture, the issue became one of power. When they said power, it united with the struggles being led by people like Che Guevara, not only throughout Latin America, but in Africa and all the oppressed and fighting peoples of the world. That became a crucial issue. It became a crucial determination. It concretized in the real world what the struggle was about. And so that we came to understand that the issue is not to make your oppressor like you and struggling against his racism. The issue is not running around trying to educate the oppressor to stop doing something bad to you. The issue was to get the power over your life so that no matter what the oppressor thinks about you, he can't do nothing to hurt you. In fact, if you want to, you can do a job on him. That's what the issue, that's what became clear to us. And so the movement achieved that amount of clarity. And of course, the fundamental thing was that it was a movement that took its ideological leadership from Malcolm X. And I mean explicitly Malcolm X. I want to be clear about that. I'm not talking about any other connection Malcolm might have had any other time. I'm talking about Malcolm X was the ideological leader of this movement. And to further the point that I want to make, because some people like to attribute Malcolm X and what he said to Elijah Muhammad. I do not. And I do not do that because Elijah didn't do that. In fact, Elijah kicked Malcolm out of the organization precisely because he did not represent what Elijah did. And there was a tremendous split in the movement at that time with folk who believed in revolution. Because you ain't never heard nobody from the Nation of Islam before or since Malcolm X talk about the revolution. The revolution. And that was the thing that distinguished, that was the thing that drew the line in the organization. Somebody was talking about revolution, and Malcolm was that person, and he became the ideological father, if you will, of this movement that we are dealing with even today. In fact, Malcolm had been killed by the imperialists precisely because of where he was trying to take the movement even before it matured to the place that it matured. Malcolm was assassinated, but it was too late. And so by 1966, the movement was talking about power, black power over our own lives. By 1967, we saw the rise of the Black Panther Party, which took the struggle even further, and recognizing that, and which was an organization immediately and explicitly informed by Malcolm X, influenced by Malcolm X, who told us, Malcolm, who told us that every African, since it's legal to have a shotgun, every African should have a shotgun in his house. And he's also said that we should form rifle clubs. Didn't he say this? We should form rifle clubs all over this country. And Huey P. Newton heard Malcolm X and formed the Black Panther Party, and was able to say that it was the influence of Malcolm X and, of course, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which also was influenced by Malcolm X, that gave rise to the Black Panther Party and what it stood for. And so we saw the rise of the Panther Party, and we saw tremendous anxiety occurring in this country, so much so that J. Edgar Hoover, who was then the executive director of the FBI, which is one of the secret political police in this country, characterized the Black Panther Party as the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States since the Civil War. Not Gaddafi, not Saddam Hussein, not the Russians, but ordinary African working class folk, most of whom lived in housing projects and had to use public transportation to get from one part of the city to the other. This was the force that Hoover declared was the greatest internal threat to the security of this country. And that's a statement about the potential for the power that we look for. And that's a statement about where the power should be looked for. It is in the masses of African workers and poor people who, given organization and ideological clarity, can achieve anything. That's the thing that Hoover and the FBI recognized. Unfortunately, not too many of our leaders today recognize that. And that's also the basis for most of the attacks that we see happening on the African workers and poor people in the housing projects and every place else, because that's where the revolution is at.
That's what we talking about right there. That was Chairman Omali Yeshitela. You know what I'm saying? I told Kimba, I said, go to the break. Keyanna on fire. So he threw some more gas on it real quick. He's like, shh, shh, shh. Keyanna, you with us? First of all, before we go any further, that shirt.
Oh, yeah.
We gotta see that shirt. Hold on, let me switch this around so you can see what that shirt say.
Stop Cop City.
Some people thought it was a Ghostbusters shirt. We know when you first came on, Kimber was like, yeah, I like Ghostbusters.
So part 1, 2, 3, 4.
This is the real part right here. You know what I'm saying? So
with the pig right there. That's a pig right there.
All things pink.
It is.
Yes. So and you was just getting started a few seconds ago, and I was just joking about folks going to the break. So I know some of y'all are looking like, I'm just scared. I ain't never scared.
Can't handle the heat, can't handle the fire.
Whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Never that.
It ain't hot enough. You see, I put my hat on, so you know what I mean? Make sure we're ready. I want to ask because again, you've been dropping so many fire bombs, and like I said, Danny Kimber gonna take it to Chairman O'Malley. Shout out to Chairman O'Malley Yeshitela from the Uhuru movement.
Yes,
for the work they
did. That was in alignment because he started talking about the leadership.
Yes,
this leadership, yes. Right?
Yeah, no doubt. Let's continue on with the leadership because I think that that's very important because right now we're in a unique situation. For me, organizing in Atlanta, I've been in Atlanta for 20 years. And I've been stomping through these streets, pavement, so on and so forth. We've organized all types of situations from Katherine Johnson to Troy Davis and many in between, many since then. But sometimes it's like, all right, we're going to take it over here real quick and let's get some other things going because I'm tired of fucking up this shoe leather. You know what I'm saying? There's rubber on these soles, and the shoes and whatnot. But one thing I noticed that was unique, I would say since George Floyd, for the first time in Atlanta, I saw a lot of white folks that was quote unquote leading the movement, which was odd because when I was out there regularly, we would put them in their place. And I'm just going to say this blunt because, and this is no diss to those white organizers that we know that are sincere about their work, that have been putting in work. Organizers such as Marlon and
absolutely. Look, our Solidarity Fund 3.
Yeah, yes. What's the name? Is it Grasshopper? No.
No, it's Marlon, Earthworm.
Earthworm. I be messing up. I've been knowing Earthworm since I knew Earthworm before the accident. We was out there organizing with them back in the day and shit. Shout out to them because I know that they're sincere forces.
Yes, yes.
There are folks out there who are sincere forces. But then I saw a lot of UFOs, black and white. The whole dichotomy, the foundation of Cop City. I didn't see a whole lot of us. And I saw some people out there that, I think we have some similarities on disagreements that we might have with some of those particular individuals.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, like, what is it like seeing this change of guard, this change of direction, so to speak? And I know some people be like, well, it shouldn't matter what. Fuck all that. We are the OVs, original victims of terrorism, and I don't give a damn. Don't come up on me with your white ass talking some crazy shit, talking about we're all against the system, we're all against oppression. My particular position, you can quote me on it, is you can join, but you don't run shit. That's how we get down. That's the school I come from. And those who are sincere about this, they understand why that is. And those who aren't, we don't care.
Yeah.
Tell me what that's like, and what's
pretty much. I mean, for me, I will say that I started my organizing when I was still living in Jersey. So I didn't encounter a lot here in Atlanta. I moved back home in 2020, right in the thick of everything, right? But what I could see was that nationally, honestly, there was a change. There was a shift where there were more white people coming out, not only to show themselves and be involved, because like you said, we got some real solid white comrades out here who understand what their privilege affords them and also understand how to leverage that for the betterment and the advancement of the movement. But what I will say is my conjecture about a space like Atlanta in particular that was dominated by Black organizers is that you had people who wanted to marry electoral politics with revolutionary organizing. And I believe that when you begin to make that marriage, that is when you have organizations like DSA and PSL who will come in, and there's a level of co-optation that happens, because as Black people, you know how we are. You learn something new, you get excited about it. You want everybody to know. And when the light bulb comes on, I will say in some instances, then you bring your people on. So if you happen to be at a rally and you heard someone from DSA, I mean, just talking, the fact that there is a democratic socialist organization, right? You're learning about socialism as a Black person, but you're still married to electoral politics in a way. And maybe you consider yourself a Democrat. When you hear something like democratic socialism, now you're inclined to learn more and you want to follow. And that enables organizations like DSA, which actually had to undergo its own implosion and reformation at this point. You have organizations like PSL that come on where you do see a majority of white people leading things, because as Black people, let's be for real, we've been taught to fear the words socialism and communism from the time that we were small. We've all grown up being indoctrinated into this white psychology of what the American dream is and what it means to be American. So when we think about things like socialism, that is merely a means of mutual aid and making sure that everybody has what they need, when you hear those things, you get scared. So it keeps you away from certain things. But then when you are exposed to it on a level where you see these white people who are out here fighting for the same things that you are, now you believe that these are the good ones. And you know what? We're onto something here, and maybe we're going to go somewhere, and you put your trust into some of the leadership that you might be just learning of, or the leadership that you're seeing. But what ends up happening is that as things move more toward the will of certain organizations, and it happens a lot when 501c3 organizations come into movement spaces, honestly. We have what are so-called revolutionary Black organizations that are really upheld by white people. We have that dynamic where within the regular 501c3 nonprofit industrial complex, there are organizations that have Black something in the title, or the mission is to foster something for Black people, but they're run by white people, really. So we have to think about this dynamic when we look at the changing landscape. And I believe that that has contributed significantly to the changing of the guard, so to speak, when it comes to organizing in the city of Atlanta. That's at least what I can see from where I am. So
just, and I'm gonna let Ikemba jump in on questions. I think he's been kind of silent. I don't know. I think he's been blowing his mind and whatnot. I'm not seeing his hairline go back like 2 inches since you got on here today. Man, getting stressed. He's sweating and whatnot over there.
Hey, now let Pastor Keyanna cook.
Yeah,
like,
cooking right now.
You acting like Boona was doing that day when Dr. Gerald Horn came on.
Oh man. Nah.
Shout out to Boona. Boona, that was Reverend Keyanna. She saw
you. It sure was. Come see me. He knows it's all love. It's all love.
No doubt. And Boona definitely, shout out to Boona here in France somewhere right now, grinning, I'm sure. Yeah, so because you hit something right there, Keyanna. You know what I'm saying? We gotta, and I'm hyped today. I just want y'all to know we just getting up, we get charged. Because see, these are the kind of guests and hosts, because we Keyanna gonna be on Black Power Media. I'm sorry, we drafting her.
I'm here.
I'll see Gerard, whatever his name is. We got to handle it, whatever we got to do. You know what I'm saying? I might leave with a black eye.
Now Gerard would love it. Gerard is all for it.
My man. I was just joking, Gerard. But anyway, listen. So to your point, you mentioned that a lot of these quote unquote Black organizations, revolutionary organizations, we talk about nonprofit, they have it's like that cream filled middle. You know what I'm saying? It looks chocolate. You know what I'm saying? When you bite into it, it's a lot of marshmallows coming out. It's a lot of vanilla coming out. You know what I'm saying? Let's talk about that, because you raised a serious point when you say that that it's upheld, and this is part of the reason why you think the landscape is. What do you mean by that? Because of the fact that there are people listening, is checking us out, and you know, for the record, you know what I'm saying? I'm not a ventriloquist. I ain't putting nothing in Keyanna.
That's right.
Mouth.
That's right.
You know what I mean? She's speaking on her own, and I'm saying that is no disclaimer. I'm just saying it is refreshing, because as I mentioned earlier off camera, in the Quran it says truth smashes the brains out of falsehood, and right now this is where we at. Let's talk about that, because that's very important, because there are some people that are coming along today that don't know anything about organizing, or they step out on the scene and they see so many others that they're confused, and we're trying to get to the bottom, like, okay, because a lot of folks are like, well, because people will ask me, in Atlanta, why aren't there so many Black folks out there dealing with Cop City? It's like a three-part question, but
it definitely is. I mean, as it relates to Cop City specifically, let me say this. There has been a narrative that was put out by the mainstream media and pushed by Mayor Andre Dickens and so many in the Black leadership class, that Cop City was a white people's issue, that there were no Black people in Atlanta who were speaking out about Cop City, which is one of the reasons why I decided to make my voice and my face more prominent, because not only am I a Black person who is from the city of Atlanta, but I'm from right where you're trying to build Cop City. My relatives went to Walker High School, which is now McNair Senior High School. I have relatives who have walked the streets of Boulder Crest and Key Road and Moreland Avenue. I was living there when there were landfills over there that you could smell for miles down Moreland. I've been living there ever since that firing range has been opened. I got a cousin who was a Red Dog, trained right over there when there was a training facility before. And that's the other thing that people forget. The city of Atlanta stewarded that land before with some police training BS, and look at how they left it. So no, I don't believe in casting my pearls before swine. I give you something and you mess it up one time, I'm not going to give it back to you for you to make it even worse. But as it relates to Cop City and the lack of Black faces, let's be for real about it. Black people out here busting their behinds, working 2 and 3 jobs to make sure that they can keep a roof over their heads, feed their children, and have transportation back and forth to work. Many of us believe that we need law enforcement. So you had a lot of Black people around the city of Atlanta saying, why y'all against them building a police academy? Because we've been taught that this is all it is. We've been taught to listen to Andre Dickens. We've been taught to listen to an Andrea Boone and a Marcy Collier Overstreet and all these Black people on the city council who don't have our best interests at heart. So what ended up happening with Cop City, because we were not informed, and because Cop City popped up overnight, let's just be clear. After 2020, people turned out in these streets like never before. Because not only did George Floyd get murdered on national television in 2020, not only was there the death of Breonna Taylor, but here in Atlanta, there was the death of Rayshard Brooks, and people showed up for real. And what was seen in the showing up, even amidst the National Guard being on the streets, was that Black people came together in a way to provide for each other and uplift each other that scared the bejesus out of these white people. It scared them, and it scared those in the Black misleadership class who go along with them. So the idea for Cop City came about after Rayshard Brooks's murder, and after continuous protests, and after the community even came together and made a liberated zone where Rayshard Brooks was murdered. They said, oh no, we can't have this. These people doing too much, and they're going to do more if it goes unchecked. And then they will show how they don't need law enforcement, how they don't need constant surveillance, how they don't need police sitting in their neighborhoods at every corner. So the idea of Cop City came about not only to increase the footprint of police terror throughout the city of Atlanta, but to send a very clear message that there's nowhere that you can go in the city of Atlanta where they are not watching you, but also that you can be touched by them at any time, and that the harassment won't stop. They meant it as a symbol of state repression so that people would not even have the thought of liberating their minds and thinking outside of that. So when you look at what was happening, it's happening in a place that most people did not even know existed. Most Black people had no idea what Entrenchment Creek Park was. Because for us, growing up in that area, knowing that the police trained there before, Black people just did not go there for what? Why do we want to be around cops? I'm not going there. Because not only did the city of Atlanta have that training facility there, but on the other side, there are 2 youth detention centers. Why am I going to a place where my Black children are being held behind bars? I don't want to go there. That doesn't mean anything good for my family. I don't get a good feeling going over there. So no, Black people didn't want to go to Entrenchment Creek Park. Most of us didn't even know it was there. But for those who did, once the issue of Cop City came about, people began to ring the alarm. And yes, they were white people, because you know what? Shout out to the South River Watershed Alliance, which is an environmental group that's been keeping tabs on not only the water quality there in the South River, they've been keeping tabs on how the watershed has been treated, how it's been maintained, how it's been neglected, honestly, and how the land there in the South River forest was neglected and what needed to be done. They've had a lot of involvement with the Georgia Environmental Protection Division and the EPA. And what happened was, because they are comprised of a lot of white people, they began to speak up. And I don't care if it's white people who started speaking up first. I don't care if people were coming from out of town to raise awareness because they knew that their white bodies presented a certain amount of privilege. That is the case. But they were here to raise awareness so that Black people like me, who lived in the area, who, when I first heard that something like Cop City was on the horizon, I was like, oh, nah, they ain't gonna do that. That'll never happen. Like, that's not gonna happen. Oh, but it did. It passed. It passed without community input. It passed despite community input. They went ahead, and at every turn, as we have fought against Cop City, we've even seen a concerted effort in the courts to stonewall us. So yeah, you see white faces, but what I will say about some of those white faces is that they came here expressly to make sure that they could put their bodies in the way of construction equipment to physically stop Cop City. But they also came here so that people would understand that this is not just about people who don't like police. It's not just about people who want to, quote unquote, defund the police. This is about our environment also. And as we know, most environmental organizations in this country do have a majority white base. That is a known fact. But does it make it any less of an issue? It doesn't. But also, you know how the Nazi media does. They make sure that they get on one narrative and they push it, they push it, they push it. So if you didn't know that there was a rally that was held during the week of March 5th that was full of Black people, where there were no arrests made and no incidences with cops, WSB TV is not showing you that. Fox is definitely not showing you that. But what they will show you is white people in Black bloc, so that they can say this is Antifa. What they will show you is the Solidarity Fund 3 and say that they're laundering money and that it should be illegal for us to bail each other out of jail through a bail fund. That's what they will show you. So that narrative of the white outside agitator, as played out as it is, because unfortunately so many people are uninformed. They didn't know that they even called Dr. King an outside agitator. They didn't know that that was the narrative of the civil rights movement. They didn't know that that was the narrative of abolition back in the days where people still held slaves. I mean, they still hold the slaves today because, you know, but that narrative is played out as it was because the media was able to give the optics to go along with it. And they did not want to cover people like me. They did not want to cover my neighbors who were coming out also. They didn't want to cover my comrades who have constantly been in the streets. We have got that narrative of the white outside agitator. And there are many who have come, who have raised awareness for this issue. They've gone back to where they live and they're raising awareness about something else in movement. But we remain. And there are, at this time, a great number of Black people here in the city of Atlanta who oppose Cop City, who have made their voices heard and who have made it known that this is not something that they want or that's good for the Black community. It's just the failure of mainstream media to cover it, but then also the Black misleadership class that will continue to promote the white outside agitator.
Right on. Dr. Kimber, what you got over there, brother? Kimber still
I can't just listen. Nah. Hey,
he said he came to work to listen. He want to be a student today. Yeah.
Hey, man,
he'll never listen either, Keyanna. This is new.
I'm trying to eat all of this food that's being served right now. Now, I appreciate everything you're dropping. You know, and this last point you made about outside agitators, it just took me back to conversations that we've had on this platform about the oppressor sort of always trying to blame someone from the outside that's coming in, trying to influence those who are being oppressed to rise up against their oppressor. And we just had the recent case with the Uhuru 3 when we're talking about Russia being Russian agents, the Uhuru 3 being Russian agents, right? And all through our movement, civil rights movement, Black Power movement, even our movement, even during slavery and Reconstruction, there's always someone from the outside. Our slaves, they're happy slaves, right? It's you Northern that's coming down here. But nobody needs anyone from the outside to tell the oppressed that they're being oppressed. So no, I appreciate you bringing that up. And I guess I would like you to, maybe touch on more. I think you kind of did go in length as far as these collaborators, right? The Miss Leadership class, because, when I think about, my position is, we shouldn't even be struggling. This is my position. I know a lot of people may not have this position, but, we shouldn't be struggling to want to join and be a part of this American design. And I feel like, a lot of our leaders, they get in this position and they may, some may unknowingly do it. And I think there's a lot that knowingly do it. They are actually in cahoots with the oppression and exploitation of African people, Black people in this country. And I was speaking with Kalonji about what's going on in Brooklyn. And when I was speaking when you were speaking to us earlier and telling us what was going on in Atlanta, it was so similar. Like there's a housing situation everywhere, right? But in Brooklyn, I was sitting down with the housing committee or members of the community with the housing committee and the land use committee. And, they're getting together and they're making decisions on how Brooklyn is going, the future of Brooklyn, how the land is going to be used, and what type of housing and so forth, right? And there's people in that are a part of the community and they don't like what they're seeing. They're like, why are y'all coming together? Y'all can't merge these committees. And they're like, we're not merging, we're just sitting down, having a joint conversation. And then there was a sister who spoke and she did not like the makeup of the land use committee because it didn't represent the community. And she said she put forth a motion to restructure the land use committee, but the chair is just like, no, motion denied, and it was sort of like this this back and forth, but they weren't listening to the people, and it's almost like we're in positions of power, we're the leaders, and we're going to decide what the future is going to look like. Last thing I said, this is more of a submission, but I'm just, building off of everything that you're saying. The land use committee, they're supposed to be checking these developers, but they're not necessarily telling stopping the developers from coming into the community. They're actually just saying, how you show up. No 20 or 30 story buildings, but you could do 15-story buildings. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And for me, it's like you're in cahoots with them, but they think that they're doing well, and they probably, hey, nothing against them. They probably think that this is helping out the community. But in the end, you are working with these developers to come into the community and make life even harder for the people that's there, to gentrify these communities where people can't live there anymore. So I say all that to say, it's just like, these collaborators, you want to touch more on that. And also just like how Cop City impacts Africans wherever they are.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, when you think about it, planning and zoning laws are nothing but legal redlining. Like, let's be for real about it. Redlining still happens. One thing that I encourage people to learn about, in as much as they can, if they have just a little bit of time, find out about the planning and zoning boards and land use laws where you live. That was one of the things that had the most impact on me when I lived in Jersey. I was working at the borough of Roselle, And I worked in the clerk's office for many years, eventually became an acting deputy municipal clerk. But during that time, I've had to sit in for secretaries of the planning board and zoning board, and eventually became a part of the development review committee. And as I began to look at regulations on land use, zoning, what it took for the planners to approve certain things, it's nothing but legal redlining, and it lends itself to gentrification in so many instances. When you think about the types of developments that are allowed in Black places, I mean, here in Georgia, we are dealing with a biolab chemical fire that occurred last week, Sunday. Sunday before this last Sunday was when the chemical fire happened. It happened in Conyers, and Conyers is a community that has always been majority Black. The plant was put there in 1973, and from the time that it was put there, there have been issues and infractions and violations of environmental law. There have been 3 fires there in the last 20 years. And when you think about this, why was such a facility allowed to even be built in a Black residential community? So many times, things like a biolab or a cop city can be built where it's majority Black because, as I said in the video you played, the environment has been used to oppress Black people for ages. When Black people talk about the material conditions in which we live, so many times we forget to talk about the environment because that is the largest material condition in which we live. It is the most pertinent, and it contributes to so many things, whether we are talking about adverse health outcomes, whether we're talking about issues with the development of our children, if we're talking about outcomes in education. The environment plays such a vital role. And when we look at industrial places, Black neighborhoods are more likely to be destroyed in favor of industry. I know that when I lived in Roselle, that was another community that was majority Black, and one route along which children had to walk to school was full of factories. So there was nothing but chemical smoke in the air all the time, and children are having to walk back and forth near this. One place that was popular in the town used to be the site of a leather factory. So there had to be like site remediation being done and a lot of water treatment going on. There was so much that was happening in this community environmentally, but it was because it was a Black community. So things that just would not fly. There's not going to be a biolab in Buckhead. There's not going to be a cop city in Buckhead. Why do you think that is? The people in Buckhead want cop city, some of them. Why not build it there?
Right.
But it's not happening there, right? So it's because of the fact that in Black communities, because we're undervalued, the environment is not a thing that is looked at as something that is needed to be protected where we are, but instead it's leveraged just like everything else to promote capitalism, and that's always profits over people. So they never think about the fact that they're taking away a vital green space. They never think about the fact that they're going to build a 15-story building. They're not going to put any sound barrier for traffic. They're not going to widen the streets because more people are coming. And they're not going to add anything of value for the community. So when we talk about planning, zoning, land use, all of these things go into how we live as Black people and how something like Cop City can come to be, how a biolab can be built in Conyers, you know, how you are having to wrestle with in Brooklyn the fact that despite other solutions for the housing crisis, corporations are getting to have their way in a majority Black community without enough input from that community.
Yeah. And as I'm sitting there listening to these discussions, I'm like, why nobody coming up with any novel ideas on how to address these problems? It's like we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. I'm like, the masses of people, like, for one, you know, why I started thinking, I'm like, why do the masses, the working class, have to go get welfare and these subsidies to be able to survive because things are so high? I'm like, man, let these corporations, let them go ask the government for money. Like,
they ask and they get. They ask.
No, I'm just saying, instead of like we having to, you know, need more resources because the cost of living is going up for us, hey, pass that on to them. Forget all that trickle down stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. Trickle down economics has never worked. It has only ever trickled on to the side laterally for those who are in power. And even when we think about it, I look at East Atlanta, where I grew up, East Atlanta is now gentrified to a point that I never thought that I would see in my lifetime. But I know that that is because of the fact that when I was little, we didn't have the same zoning designations in East Atlanta that we do now. When I was little, you were either going to be a residence or a commercial space, period. There was no mixed use space going up in East Atlanta. But also those things only come to benefit white people, because now I see buildings going up in East Atlanta that have an urgent care on the bottom floor, or an ophthalmologist, or a dentist. That's only for the white people when they come, because as long as it's majority Black, you will never see those zoning designations. Because how dare you Black people dream about being able to provide comprehensively within your own neighborhood? We're always going to make it so that you have to travel, whether it's for a doctor's office or for a dentist's office, whether it's for a safe school or a place to work. You're going to have to travel. We're going to make you struggle. That's the reason why the number one hallmark of gentrification is them cutting public transportation lines. They want to make sure your Black ass can't get back over there when they kick you out. Like literally. There used to be a bus that went through East Atlanta that passed my granny's house where I grew up. That bus no longer runs through East Atlanta because it used to go straight downtown. That's too much access for Black people. We have to begin to understand what the tools are and how they're used in succession, so that when we see these hallmarks, we can go ahead and step in. The first thing we need to do, if you're in Atlanta, you need to get around your NPU, your neighborhood planning unit. You need to understand what these NPUs do, because they have a lot of influence over what happens as far as zoning and planning. You also need to know who is on your zoning board of commissioners, who is on your planning board, how they work, when they meet. And you need to see some of these things that are being proposed. Like, don't drive by that sign that has like the letter Z and planning permit issued or applied for, whatever. Go to those meetings. Have your voice heard, but see what they're talking about. See how it is that they make all these things happen many times when the rest of us are at work purposely so that we can't have input. But if we decided as a community that we were going to keep up with these meetings and we were going to have somebody there at every one, now we can be informed, and then we can plan our course of action, because we can't let these suckers outplan us. Like, that's the reason why we end up where we are all the time, because evil plans. We react. We have to stop being so reactionary, and we got to plan like they do.
When you talked about East Atlanta, I couldn't help but think about Boulevard. Couldn't help to think about the West End.
Yes,
these are places. I mean, Boulevard. You know, I got a sister who happens to be on the fire department, but she has a house over that way, right? And her husband at the time, and still is, he's a music producer. So we would go over there and we'd record our first podcast. And I remember at first going over there, you know, you would see, nothing but Black folks. You know, it was bananas. It's like you knew that you was in the hood. We knew what time it was. And then one day, by and by, I see a white woman jogging on Boulevard at 11 p.m.
There goes the neighborhood.
When you see a white woman jogging through your neighborhood, it's like an ant that you see in the house. When you see that one ant, best believe
some more.
They coming. You know what I mean? So I look and I'm like, damn. I'm like, I had to look. I'm like, because I'm like, man, I had to change my glasses. I had to do Red Fox, Fred Sanford. I had to switch glasses in the car. Like, hold up, man, that lady look white. You know what I'm saying? And sure enough, by and by, is a whole nother program right now. So much so that we was producing a shout out to my brother Balagoon. We was producing a hip hop video over there. We had Wise Intelligent and his group Diaspora Black, and this white woman who was the neighbor of my sister, she comes up. She said, "What are y'all doing over here?" I said, "Shit, I was gonna ask you the same thing." She looked at me like, what do you mean? I said, shit, what your white ass doing over here? You know what I'm saying? Like, you what we doing over here?
Pretty much, like, this is our neighborhood.
Yeah,
We've been here.
Yeah, but you get you're so emboldened that
once
once you invade, you lay down the laws,
absolutely,
and dictate the reality of the community.
Absolutely. That's why when they come, they bring speed bumps and stop signs.
Yeah, but they the true outside agitators. But we come along and you was here, but black can't get it back. I want to ask you, because I think that one of the things you mentioned was the environmentalism. You know what I'm saying? And our organization, FTP movement, when we say FTP, most people think of fuck the police, feed the people and all that. And rightfully so. You know what I'm saying? Rightfully so. But we also for the planet. Right? So I want to ask you, because of the fact that you mentioned Walani Forest, a place where natives were displaced. Muskogee tribe, natives were displaced. I think back in 1836 was the last time.
Yeah, the Indian Removal Act. Yep.
Right. So they were removed. Then you had the whole slave plantation situation.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then the city purchased it.
Prison farm.
And now we are where we are today. So it's the same thing over and over. It's like it's a part of gentrification, what you talked about, right? But we don't even call it gentrification, it's land grab. So the question I have, because of the fact that we're talking about these 380 plus acres of land, how does that impact and affect the environment? Because again, living in Atlanta, you have guests coming in from out of town and they're amazed when they see things like deer. You look all over the, you see more deer in our neighborhood than you see stray dogs. In the hood, you saw more dogs, pit bulls, pigeons, etc. In the neighborhood, it's nothing to look out and see 7, 8, a dozen deer just out there, and all types of other, animals and wildlife. How does this Cop City situation affect and impact the environment as far as what's going on here in the city?
So not only has it displaced a lot of the wildlife that call that a natural habitat, whose natural habitat it is, that is the most immediate thing that you see. It's the first thing that you see. Like you said, you see more deer these days than stray dogs. You see a lot of raccoons. You're seeing so many more possums and foxes even. Yeah. You are seeing the animals, and they are the evidence of the environmental destruction. But when we're talking about that neighborhood in particular, and just a thing like Cop City that destroys so much,
armadillos.
Like yes,
yeah.
I saw one on flat shows actually on the back of South DeKalb Mall.
They be messing me up. I'm like, what the hell? When we get armadillos?
Yes, armadillos. I have seen them. And when I say that, you think about that. And for some people, it's like, oh, well, that's undeveloped land. We need to develop that land. And it's like, do we really? Because do you understand the flooding issues that take place in this side of DeKalb County? And do you know what trees do to mitigate that flooding? But also, do you understand the influx of people and what traffic is like and the added pollution, and that you need trees still to breathe clean air, right? The South River Forest was known as one of the 4 lungs of Atlanta, which means that we needed those trees, literally needed them to breathe clean air, because we know what trees do to process free radicals and other things in the air. But when you take and you cut down those trees, not only are we talking about poor air quality, because in addition to the trees not being there, now you have construction going on and you have some more stuff that's going up into the air. But also you have a firing range that is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you got bullets that contain lead that are going into the water. And let's forget about the fact that there is a so-called water treatment facility on Key Road. But let's think about that lead going into our water. And one of the things that there's been a lot of study on is the effects of lead levels and lead contamination to the development of children, thereby affecting educational outcomes. But let's just also think about the fact that lead exposure contributes to things like asthma. When you're in your classroom and you think about it, a child growing up and going to Barack Obama Elementary School, which is on the other side of Cop City, might not think that it's abnormal that the majority of his class has an inhaler because, hey, that's just the way it is. But I promise you that a child going to school in Alpharetta doesn't have 50% of his classroom with an inhaler because that's not the environment in which they live. We talk a lot about lead when it comes to water, but so many times we don't consider the ground. Our children are outside at recess. They're playing in dirt that is also full of lead. And then we don't think about the noise pollution that comes from the constant gunfire. I stood on the campus of McNair Senior High School one day around 12:20 in the afternoon, and there was nothing but gunshots. And I mean, I heard them clearly. So imagine students that are traversing that campus to go from building to building, class to class. If we are thinking about the types of trauma that our children so often endure, and there are some children who are coming from an environment where they might hear gunshots regularly outside of that firing range, what does that do to the psyche of a child who is constantly hearing those gunshots? How are they going to concentrate? How are they going to think critically? And thereby, how will they perform well on these standardized tests that drive the educational system? But we know also that standardized testing is one component in the school to prison pipeline. So when we think about the deliberate environmental effects that will adversely affect development and education of our children, thereby adding to the prison industrial complex, just as these white people predict, then you can't ignore what the environment means when we talk about something like Cop City, because this is the same area where I grew up with those landfills that were open. Those landfills are still there. They're not in operation, but they are still there. And what is happening? We still have methane gas that's seeping into the ground from there. We have a huge issue with silt runoff for the Weelaunee Forest. When we're talking about them building Cop City, silt runoff has been one of those things that's been off the chart since the beginning, that we've actually gone to court for violations of the Clean Water Act. We've been rebuffed every time, although our arguments are more than valid. We're talking about a mulch fire that happened not far from there a couple of weeks ago that has now killed all of the life that was in the South River on that end. So when you think about these environmental aspects of what Cop City means, you're talking about a lack of clean air, a lack of clean water, the lack of a peaceful environment and meaningful green space. This means something. You know how you feel when you can go out into a space, whether it's a forest or whether it's just a small patch of woods behind your house. But when you go out into nature and it's peaceful and you hear the birds chirping, you're thankful if you hear a little creek running, those types of things that ground you, not only within yourself, but reconnect you with the earth and remind you that you are meant to live with the earth and not off of the earth. I believe that it is further disconnecting Black people from their bodies, which means that you're disconnecting me from myself. You're disconnecting me from the earth. And so you're disconnecting me from my fellow man. And what does that do? That keeps a Black neighborhood in turmoil. That means that Black families can't be who we need them to be and who they're meant to be. And what does it mean when a Black family can't function? It means pandemonium for us, but it's all that the establishment is looking for. So we can't ignore what the environment means for this area, but also that there are Black people who do care about what the environment means to us, how we live in it, how it affects how we live. And it is really my mission with the Sierra Club to make sure that more Black people know. And I appreciate the fact that this is an organization that's been intentional about saying, we know that it's Black people and other people of color and marginalized communities that are most directly affected by environmental racism. And we want to make sure that they have a voice in this fight for climate justice. We want to make sure that they understand that this is not by happenstance, but this is deliberate, that it's been done to you purposely, and they'll keep doing it to you if you let them. So I appreciate the intentionality of the Sierra Club and wanting to make sure that those most directly affected by climate change have a voice, that they even gave me the opportunity to organize this way, because I was able to say to them, look, I got a plan. and this is my plan. Like, this is what I want to do. Because the one thing that I found in all of my organizing around Cop City was that we as Black people missed why the environment is an issue as it relates to Cop City. And it's one of the things that is the most important about why Cop City is an issue, because it is literally life and death for us.
No doubt. I know we have, I know you have a few minutes. So before we let you go, we want to ask you, what is the current state of Cop City? You know, what is taking place? I know there's been, you know, of course, there's been this whole vote for this referendum and all that type of stuff. Give us some, you know, what's the state and how do you feel about this whole, you know, the referendum and all this other stuff that's going on?
Yeah, that's a heavy one right there. But what I'll say is that the current state is that the facility is in the process of being built. And they are projecting that it will be opening by December 31st this year. We'll see if that happens, because the city of Atlanta and the APF, the Atlanta Police Foundation, routinely lie about the amount of progress that's going on. It very well could open by December 31st, 2024. However, our message is still Stop Cop City, because one of the things that has been most important in the messaging is not so much about the building, but it is about what Cop City represents and what that means for Black people at large, right? This is an unprecedented level of state repression. This is a concerted effort of government on all levels to make sure that a Black community is disenfranchised, but also going hand in hand with that on the legal side. This is the amplification of things like the RICO statute and the domestic terrorism statutes here in Georgia that would criminalize people for simply expressing dissent. And that's a very dangerous area. And that in itself is fascism. So we've been continually ringing the alarm about that. So the message is still Stop Cop City, because it's not about stopping that building. It's about stopping the level of repression and oppression under which we live. That's really what we're going for. This is still an abolitionist movement. This is still about the fact that we don't need law enforcement, but that we also want to begin to build in community our alternative systems to combat what people see as the need for law enforcement. We want to make sure that we are building systems of real mutual aid that can fortify community, where we can hold each other up and we're not dependent upon parts of this system, because we see that they will fail us every time. So whether that building is built and opens in December or not, we're still out here saying Stop Cop City, because we are still continuing to make sure that we educate Black people about what it really means. I organize with a collective of comrades on the ground, and we call ourselves Strike Black. People probably seen us out on the West Side, because that's where we're focusing. Black people on the West Side, because that's where we found that people really didn't know what was honestly going on and needed to understand what this means for them. Helping people to understand that the fact that we say Stop Cop City and Free Palestine in the same breath is because the idea for Cop City came from Israel. Because there was a police chief years ago that went and thought it was so cool how the Israelis surveil Palestine. So he wanted to first bring back their intricate system of surveillance to Atlanta. And now we are the most surveilled city per capita in the United States. And then they saw that Israel has a little chazah wherein they practice urban warfare. And voila, what do we have now? A proposal for the same thing, because we are making sure that we continue that imperialism that has led Israel to even be a country in the first place. We want to make sure that we continue to extend that by importing and exporting violence through the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange and other deadly exchange programs. But what we see is that we can no more separate ourselves from what's going on in Palestine than we can from what's going on in the Congo, where children as young as 15 years old and younger are being made to work in a mine so that they can mine cobalt, coltan, gold, and all the things that we need for technology. How does that mirror the United States? We got legislators trying to repeal child labor laws. And who do you think that's going to affect mostly? So when we think about these things, we have to look at them on a global scale and understand how they really affect us. So that's why Strike Black is still continuing to organize, to particularly mobilize Black people around what Cop City is. The referendum will be whatever it will be. Those people will continue to organize. And I will say personally that I was employed by an organization that was a part of the launching of the referendum. So I worked on the referendum. I ran canvassing for the referendum, and I am even party to the lawsuit for the referendum, wherein myself and other neighbors from DeKalb County did sue Andre Dickens, the city of Atlanta, for their statute that barred people from DeKalb County from collecting signatures. So it is my lawsuit that has my name as a plaintiff that people like to talk about and sometimes misinform people, but that lawsuit is still in limbo. And I want people to understand that there is no reason why almost a year later, we don't have a decision. Final oral arguments in that lawsuit took place December 14th, 2023. It is almost December 14th again, and we don't have an answer, but we can see that the courts are determined to hold us off until the facility is built, because one of the things that we were calling for was for people to be able to say whether you want this contract to be canceled or not. So they want the contract to be complete before they will render a decision. But again, the referendum crew, they will organize how they organize. I myself, I remain in these streets doing what I can when I can, making sure that I am educating people about what Cop City means, because that's the main thing. There's a lack of education that has gone into anyone who is in favor of Cop City. But then there are just some who are like, nah, I want to make sure I'm at the mayor's birthday party next year, so I'm gonna make sure that I say that Cop City is good. Or, you know, you could be like some of these people in the Concerned Black Clergy who got like $10,000 from the mayor for their birthdays. Like, yeah, no, I'm not going to say that it's wrong for them to have shot somebody who was sitting with their hands up. I'm just going to ignore it so I can get another $10,000 next year for my birthday. And yeah, by the way, go vote and vote Democrat. But, you know, the whole world of the movement is still moving, because the RICO cases continue. There will be motions, I believe, next week, as early as next Friday, or it might be the 10th is what, this Friday?
Right. Yep.
Motions will be heard
Thursday.
This Friday. So yeah, it's like people Thursday. Okay. So at any rate, like,
I mean, today.
There are still RICO cases that are being heard. And remember that the majority of those charged in the RICO cases are also charged with domestic terrorism. So there's a lot that we still have to educate people about when we talk about what state repression really looks like, what state sanctioned violence honestly is, and what domestic terrorism is, because domestic terrorism is being charged with domestic terrorism for simply attending a music festival. You know, so when we think about those things, we realize that there has to be continued education for people so that they understand that Cop City is not a fly-by-night thing, that this is going to have lasting effects, whether a building is there or not. And the last thing that has been a point for people is for them to understand that even if Cop City is built, we know how to repurpose the building. Like, if the referendum makes it to a ballot, and people say, no, we didn't want this, when the establishment says, well, what are you going to do? It's already built. It's all right. We know how to repurpose buildings. We know how to do what we need to do with the land that we are given, and we will do just that. So state of the referendum is that it is still pending. The courts are stonewalling us. So I do not have hope that they will give us a decision by the end of the year. I'm just going to be very honest with that. I don't believe there's going to be a decision by the end of the year, because I'm sure that they are holding it until things are pretty much cut and dry. We're doing a ribbon cutting at Cop City, but people are still out here who are walking these streets, making sure that we educate people, making sure that we keep ringing the alarm, because it is necessary and essential. And for me, y'all know I be preaching over there at the church at
coming through. I'm gonna bring Bishop Ikemba through. You know what I'm saying?
Come through,
First Revolutionary Church of Jehoshaphat.
Look, come through the Park Avenue, the most unbaptist church you will ever experience.
So we want to thank you, and for transparency, I want to say right here in front of you that I, for one, have been very critical in regards to the referendum. So I'm glad that you brought some clarity, and there will be some interviews that I have coming up that haven't been released yet, where I'm very critical towards that referendum. But I'm glad that you gave me a different perspective on it, and that's something that we can talk about. But I want to say that because I don't want to come off like, oh, well, he was just on there with us and such. Yes,
it's crazy because like there has to be critique, and also what people have to understand is that the referendum is one of those things that had to happen, because the referendum is one of those things that also showed people that electoral politics will not save us. It's one of those things that show people that we can do it all the right way, because those nonviolent Kenyan people, who want to focus on respectability politics and that type of stuff. How much more respectable do you get than an entire legal process? But when you still get the door slammed in your face and you've done everything right. It was one of those things that had to happen, for better or worse. People had to see that. And I
appreciate it. Yeah. And
you do it that way still.
That's where the criticism came in. And plus, I knew that there was a couple suckers involved. So, what I'm saying? So I can point that out as well. So my criticism was really for the suckers. And what your man LL say, not this time, but next time I'm gonna name names. But anyway, check it out.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
Yes, we appreciate you. One of my favorite new pastors. You know what I'm saying? Reverend Keyanna Jones Moore. You know what I'm saying? And keep turning that wine, Uncle Nearest, and we're gonna keep on that water. I said that wine, Uncle Nearest. See, I hope they got a space for me in the gates. Anyway, enjoy, be safe, and we'll see you soon.
All right, y'all.
On your new show on Black Power Media.
Be safe. I'm looking forward to it. Peace, y'all.
Doubt. Yes, be safe. That was Keyanna Jones Moore dropping jewels. I think we're gonna go to a quick break real quick before we tap out. We got something that we need to give to people real quick.
Let's give it to them, man.
Okay. Y'all checking out the Rise Up. Y'all know what it is.
Can you hear me? I think one of the things that we really have to do is we have to understand that we are living in a police state. We are seriously living under democratic fascism, where the delusion or the illusion of the vote doesn't remove the fact that to the government, every American citizen is a potential terrorist. Each one of you is a potential terrorist. You're not a potential contributor to the common weal, to the betterment of society. You're held in suspicion as a potential terrorist. Your police agencies spy on you. They go to your mosque and to your churches. They twist your words and they make you into a terrorist. So we have to challenge, in my view, the political power of the police. We have to take on community control of public safety. We have to transform the relationship between the police and the public. As it stands today, the police believe that we work for them. They work for you. So what do we have to do? I think in this city, given the history of the police, its racism, the harassment that is visited on poor communities every day, we see them every day in the streets, that we should use the ballot box, the referendum, to call for decentralization of public safety. We need to build a coalition in this city to take the power of the police and their ability to police our communities out of the hands of bureaucrats and politicians and put them in the hands of community people, in the hands of our people. The police should be servants of the people and not the people subjected to the police power. We have to challenge the political power of law enforcement. Because if we don't challenge the political power of law enforcement, any civil servant who takes a test today and gets a gun tomorrow can murder you with impunity. We have to understand that we can police ourselves better than anyone else. We have to build communities where the police live and work in our community. The police have to live and work in our community. They should be from amongst us. Then we don't have to worry about unsafe streets because his children are using those streets. We don't need a professional down at City Hall or Bratton who they call over to the UK to give them advice on how to control the niggas in the UK. We don't need that. We need community district policing boards, public safety in our community. Each community should determine how policing policy is carried out in their community. We need a residency clause. The police shouldn't brutalize black people in Harlem and then go live out in Long Island in a nice, safe house. The judge in the district courts shouldn't pass judgment on poor, unemployed black youth and then go out to the Hamptons and live comfortably. We need accountability. That's what Che said. Che said, accountability. We have to hold law enforcement accountable to the people and the needs of this city. And we can do it through referendum. We can build a coalition across class lines, across gender lines. We can mobilize the vote. We can talk about getting votes back for the ex-offenders. Ex-offenders have to come forward and speak for themselves. There are 65 million people in this country with criminal convictions. Where is their voice? Where is the constituency? Where are the elected officials that represent them when they can't get a job because they have a criminal record? Brothers and sisters, in this city, we need to decentralize public safety. We need to use the ballot box and the referendum to register voters so that this becomes an issue in this campaign year. That New York City need police that serve the community and that come from the community and that have the needs of the community at heart. Until we do that, we're going to be subjected to the terror of these SWAT teams, these people running around with guns in our community, the war on drugs that are criminalizing our generations. Until we stand down the police will continue to brutalize and dominate us. So what we need is a broad coalition in this city to decentralize public safety.
It's all on me. Hey, peace. Welcome back to Rise Up Morning Show. Thanks for tapping in. Make sure, too, if this is your first time being with us on Black Power Media, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you get a notification when we are doing these shows. Hey, what's going on, brother?
That was on point. It's funny because the brother we actually that you just showed was actually just called me at the same time. So, yeah. But no, that was
he heard his voice, man.
You know what I'm saying? Attica is all of us. That was a powerful piece in New York. Of course, you see Amy Goodman. I know that our brother who is now an ancestor, Jazz Hayden, who made his transition earlier this year as well. He was on that clip with others. But yeah, no, that's definitely a powerful piece, and it was in line with what you was talking about. I didn't hear what you were saying before I hopped back on, but definitely in line with the whole alternative to the cop city. And one of the
the whole conversation today,
indeed. But one of the criticisms when I was talking about the criticism of the referendum, Dhoruba talked about a referendum. He talked about a public safety referendum where we wouldn't need police chiefs. We wouldn't need, those type of councils, but put together a board that was elected and controlled by the people themselves that had that power to hire and fire. So that's one of the things that we was critical about, opposed to saying, okay, we're going to vote to get this thing on the ballot. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Our whole position is like, okay, we already know how this electoral system works, so how do we deal with it? But as Keyanna pointed out, it's definitely necessary because people need to know what electoral politics really means here in the United States.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like also just the point of community control of, I like to say defense. I don't like saying, policing, more so just like defending, protecting the community from external and internal people who want to, cause chaos, right? Perpetrators.
Right.
When you are from the community,
predators, right?
Yeah, when you're from the community and your interest is in defending and protecting it, and that obligation falls to you, the community is going to look a whole lot different. For one, the people in the community, who's doing what, you can check everything before it even transpired in the community.
Right.
But when you're from outside of the community, you don't know, you coming in as a foreign force, just really occupying. And when anything come down, you just, you're responding to it.
Right.
But, like when we in the hood, we already know who beefing with who doing what, you know what I'm saying? Like we can intervene and we can do all types of stuff where it don't escalate. And, we got to come through and handle you, like we could do some reconciliation, a conflict resolution. We could do it this way, or we could do it the other way,
right.
those conversations. And so that's even something that I'm encouraging our community members to begin to do. I was watching the news the other day in Philadelphia. Some three guys got on the bus, got into an argument with the bus driver, got off the bus and started licking shots at the bus. A 6-year-old got hit. Like they just indiscriminately shooting at the bus. And I'm just like, yeah, like who, like they shouldn't even feel like they could do something like that. You know what I'm saying? You from the community feel like you could just randomly shoot. There should be some community consequences because somebody knows who they are. If your son did that, your nephew or your neighbor, it's time for you, what I'm saying, to go handle that, because we can't be having, no matter who it is, our community members causing harm to other community members. But that has been taken away from us. The state has taken our ability to, provide protection and defense for our own communities. And there's a reason for that, because they're the enemy. because the people who we will be defending our community from is the state. So, they have to take that power away from us.
No doubt. Well, hey, man, as we do about this time, like we always do around this time, you checking out the Rise Up morning show. And I think that did we wake them up this morning, brother?
Yeah, they're woke now. That was their caffeine right there.
That's what it was. We wanted to make sure you get that caffeine, as my man said, that black power, that black coffee. You know what I mean? No sugar, no cream. And you let it do what it do. Definitely shout out to Reverend Keyanna for stopping through today. And like I said, it's a rumor that she'll have a show on this platform. They don't even know, man. We got some things coming. We got some heats.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? There's a few different folks out there that know what time it is, but some of them are trying to front like they don't. But it's all good. That's what comes with this thing. You know what I mean? We're gonna keep bringing it to you. We're gonna keep giving it to you, rough, rugged, and raw. Here at Black Power Media, the Rise Up Morning Show. I'd like to thank my comrade Kimber for allowing me to ride shotgun today. You know what I'm saying? In these mean streets. Y'all enjoy your day. Be safe out there. Be strong. You know what I'm saying? Prayers for what's going on in regards to the whole Hurricane Milton situation and all the other things that's happening. And we're going to make sure we stay on the right side of the barricade. Again, Rise Up Morning Show, Black Power Media. Salute, salute, salute. And we will see you soon. Stay up.
Power to the people.
Power to the people. Now we can just do this outro real quick because we know that when you got Kimber and I on here at the same time, anything can happen. And when I say anything could happen or anything might not happen. You know what I'm saying?
But Well, I was about to say it's going to happen, but
well, it's going to happen right about now. We out. We'll catch you in a minute. Rise up.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one. Well, the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and a stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution. It's real solutions. Well, we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Well, my inner me, really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky. A chariot's a swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior is coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution. It's real solutions. Where we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my enemy is really a mirror.